Welcome to all joining us today. My name is Adele Kroch and I'm from Food Focus, and I want to thank the Dairy Standard Agency for this webinar. We are receiving a lot of positive feedback from industry that the webinars are adding value, and it is great being part of it. The webinar will be recorded and the slides will also be available with the recording. We try to put this up before the end of the week, so if you go to our website, you will see it on our website, foodfocus.co.za. The DSA is surely achieving their objective to support and interact with industry, and all of this to promote the improvement of the quality of milk and other dairy products in the industry for the consumers. We have a very interesting topic today, and after numerous requests, it was well thought to revisit the topic of the effective sampling of milk and dairy products in the trade. For the benefit of especially the environmental health practitioners, but also retailers, the focus will be on the sampling of milk and dairy products as per the Dairy Standard Agency's National Monitoring Program. Today, we will be sharing with you the sampling procedure of milk and dairy products with reference to Regulation 328 of 20 April 2007 and the International ISO Standard 707 of 2008. We will be looking at how to ensure that the sampling of milk and dairy products in the trade is effective, and it gives me great pleasure now to introduce you to your presenter today, Jacqueline Odendaal. Jacqueline, thank you so much for taking the time to do this presentation today. I would like to just give you a little bit of a background of who Jacqueline is. Jacqueline achieved a BSc Agri-Food Science and Technology degree at the University of Pretoria in 1999. She started her career at the training board for the dairy industry, where she discovered her passion for training and development. And we're so grateful for that passion, Jacqueline, and we can see with all these amazing webinars that you are planning throughout the year with the DSA, definitely your passion shines through. She was then on the training board. The training board then ceased to exist in 2000, which led to a new direction in her career. She was employed by a Sensory Assignment Africa and later McCormick SA to conduct market research in the food industry by means of sensory evaluation. Her passion for training remained, and she fortunately got the opportunity to return to the dairy industry as a training consultant for Sanpro, and later had the exciting experience of being part of creating competence. Currently, she is part of the DSA as the technical manager, where she assists with information, communication, education programs in work groups, provide consultation, and act in an advisory role to the milk producers and dairy processing companies. Jacqueline, we are so looking forward to your presentation, and I'm going to hand over to you so that you can present to us. There we go. Thank you so much, Jacqueline.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adele. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for making time to attend this webinar. It is always such a pleasure and privilege to share information. So I really hope that you can find this presentation beneficial. Right, so sampling is such an important topic for us at Dairy Standard Agency. And I decided to start the presentation with a bit of background on our company so that you can see how sampling forms an integral part of our activities and why it is important for us to share information about sampling. Well, the Dairy Standard Agency is a non-profit organization with the primary objective of promoting the compliance of milk and other dairy products with product composition, food safety and metrology standards. We have a responsibility towards the consumer and other role players in the industry to ensure that the dairy products offered for sale are safe for human consumption and that it complies with the legal specifications that are set out in legislation. So, and it's also, I just want to mention that substandard products reaching the retail can cause extensive and prolonged harm to both the industry and the consumer. So we have an obligation. The DSA's activities are determined by its mandate, which entails, first of all, the monitoring of milk and other dairy products, then communication with industry, government structures and other stakeholders, and also a support service to the dairy industry and other stakeholders. So that is our mandate. The national monitoring of milk and dairy products is done in collaboration with municipal health authorities. In cooperation with these authorities in 9 provinces, an estimated 500 samples are taken quarterly for testing at our DSA lab service laboratory. The process results are also conveyed to the health authorities, who are then placed in a position to identify possible food safety risks, as well as non-compliance to standards, with aim to take further appropriate action. So it is absolutely crucial for us to convey that information also to the environmental health practitioners. Now, it's important for me to just mention this, that the processors and retailers cannot use the DSA's National Monitoring Program as their quality control program or as a certification of quality. This monitoring program is merely a quarterly screening of the products in the trade, but it can definitely assist the role players in their quality control and assurance. Oh, Simon Sinek is a brilliant motivational speaker, and he always says that everything starts with why. By answering the question, you can get a clear indication of direction and purpose. We should also ask why. Why is the topic of sampling so important? Because when we think of sampling, it is not a very complex procedure, and for this reason, sometimes underestimated and also neglected. So why is it so important? The answer is effective sampling is the foundation for the monitoring of milk and dairy product quality, and therefore we should pay more attention to it. Reliable, accurate lab results can only be obtained if the sampling process was effective. And then in order to make the correct interpretation, communication and follow-up actions, we need reliable lab testing, lab results. So you can see if the foundation of sampling is not strong enough, the entire building of the monitoring process will collapse. So it is so important to realize the importance of sampling. Legislation is DSA's cornerstone. Not only do we ensure that milk and dairy products comply with the applicable regulations, but we also make sure that when we sample, it is according to legislation. In this webinar, the focus will be on the Department of Health's Foodstuffs, Cosmetics and Disinfectants Act, where the purpose of the Act is stated clearly: to control the sale, the manufacture, the importation and exportation of foodstuffs, cosmetics and disinfectants, and to provide for incidental matters. Now, the two, a regulation and standard that we are going to focus on, I've put it there also on the screen, is Regulation 328 of 20 April 2007, and with the title Regulations Relating to the Powers and Duties of Inspectors and Analysts Conducting Inspections and Analysis of Foodstuffs at Food Premises in terms, and this is in terms of the Foodstuffs Act, and it prescribes, amongst other, the procedure that an EHP or an inspector must follow when taking milk or dairy product samples. And then the international standard ISO 707 of 2008 with the title Milk and Milk Products, Guidance on Sampling, as quoted in Regulation 3 to 8, shall, where applicable, be followed during the sampling process. And I just want to mention that the ISO standard cannot just be downloaded from a website. You can only buy it, and it's been bought at iso.org. You can get hold of that. Yeah, and I just want to mention that ISO 707 is adapted also in SANS 314 of 2012. So that's just a bit of background on the legislation. So if we want to take sampling to the next level, our focus should be on Regulation 328 and ISO 707. The rest of the information that I will be sharing on the sampling procedure is in line with this regulation and international standard. Good. If we want to look at the person taking the sample, the person taking the milk or dairy product sample should have the authorization as an inspector under the Foodstuffs, Cosmetic and Disinfectant Act. When taking a sample, especially when it's a bulk sample, it is advisable for the inspector to properly introduce him or herself to the retailer and also to explain the purpose of sampling. The retailer should understand the benefit of the testing of their product and should be informed that the test results will be conveyed and explained after analysis of the sample. So it's information that should be shared with the retailer. Regulation 328 also states that the inspector should take the sample in the presence of the person in charge, or if such a person is not available, it should be in the presence of an adult who is employed on the premises. And that we should make sure that it is done in that way. Right, for Dairy Standard Agency's National Monitoring Program, the sampling of the milk or the dairy product is done at the point of purchase. That is the place where the consumer buys the product. Well, that can be from the store shelf. It can be from a bulk tank in a retail outlet, or it can be milk that from a milk can that is kept in a cold room. Now, that last bullet is not the ideal, but unfortunately, it is a reality. So the sampling must be taken at that point as well. Just to focus on this point, next point, it does not include taking samples on the farm who delivers the milk to the factories for further processing. And it also does not include taking samples at the final consumer, for example, at a creche or old age home. So it is at the point of purchase. Now, with every cycle, raw milk and pasteurized milk is sampled, but we have a separate schedule for the dairy products or the byproducts, which I'm going to share with you in a moment. Due to high costs, the lab only obtains consumables for a specific cycle's analysis. Therefore, not all products can be tested at any given time, as different products require different analysis. You can understand then that it's crucial then to stick to the byproduct or the dairy product schedule. We really want to please ask that no non-dairy products be sampled. And that is, for example, dairy-free milk or cream, or products like margarine or fat spreads. The ingredient list of the product can be checked, and just to make sure that it is in fact a dairy product and that you can sample it. Right, let's have a look at the byproduct schedule. I've just divided into the 4 quarters. Quarter 1 is the fermented products, and that will include products like yogurt, plain or with added foodstuffs. It will include drinking yogurt, dairy snacks, cultured milk or amasi, or cultured buttermilk. They all fall under the fermented product group. In quarter 2, our testing is done on cream. Now, the cream can be double thick, can be pouring, whipping cream, it can be cultured cream, sour cream, or acidified cream, and then butter, cultured butter, modified butter, or cultured modified butter. And I just want to again state there, it's not margarine. So you must just make sure it's not a plant-based, but it's in fact real butter. Quarter 3 is the cheese, and that can be hard, semi-hard, semi-soft, soft, processed cheese, cheese spread, cream cheese, or cottage cheese. That will all fall under the cheese category. Our last quarter of the year is quarter 4, is sweetened condensed milk, evaporated milk, UHT milk, sterilized milk, dairy powder, milk powder, dairy powder blends, and it can also include dairy liquid blends, for example, dairy desserts like custards, fall all under the category, the last quarter's category. So that is just to show you the schedule of the byproducts. Good. When sampling from the shelf, it is important when you sample from the retail shelf is to make sure that the expiry date on the product is at least 2 days later than the collection date, the date where DSA will collect the sample from the municipality. Make sure it is not our policy to analyze products beyond the best before date, and it is not the objective of the project to determine the shelf life of products. So we only determine whether a sample complies with microbial requirements when offered for sale within the date printed on the packaging. If a packed product is sampled from the shelf, there should be no tampering with the original packaging material. And then regulation 3 to 8 states that the inspector should pay for the product from the shelf if the sample is taken to verify compliance. That is in the case of DSA's National Monitoring Program. No payment is required if the inspector has reason to suspect that the product is unsound, unwholesome, or unfit for human consumption. So that's the only time when you get a product from the shelf that payment is not needed. Good. We are now moving to when we sample the bulk milk tank or from a milk can. When sampling from a bulk tank or milk can, samples for microbial analysis or microbial tests are always taken first using aseptic techniques with sterilized equipment. But for the DSA sample, only one sample is taken, so the micro tests are also done on that sample, and therefore the sample bottle provided is sterile. So only one sample is taken. It is required to mix the milk prior to sampling to ensure that a representative sample is taken. Now, the time of the mixing depends on the size of the tank. Usually 5 minutes when the tank capacity is 500 to 4,000 liters. It's also stated that if it's small vessels, the small vessels are mixed by transfer, stirring, or plunging. If it is milk tanks, mechanical action, agitation, at least for 5 minutes. And if it's a large vessel, at least for 5 minutes, and that is 30 minutes after filling, or at least 15 minutes if the milk was stored for longer. When we sample milk from a milk can, we should use the same method that the shop use to scoop the milk in it for the consumer. So that is the same method when you are sampling from a milk can. When sampling from a bulk tank, it is always sample at the milk tap, the same place where the consumer will get the milk from. The only time when we sample at the top of the bulk tank is when we do a root cause analysis to determine where the problem is, and then in such a case, a sterilized and flamed dipper should be used. The sterilizing agents that are normally used can be alcohol, or you can also use a lighter or match to flame the dipper. But as I've mentioned, the only time that we are sampling at the top is when a root cause analysis is done. So for normal sampling, please at the tap of the bulk tank. Then what to do next after the sample has been taken? A sample should be kept cold, lower or equal to 5 degrees Celsius during the transport and storage. And the sample should not be frozen. The sample container should, within 15 minutes of the sample be taken, be surrounded by crushed ice or other suitable refrigerant which comes into contact with the container. And a cooler box can be used to transport the samples. By having all the temperature recordings, we can make sure that the cold chain is not broken. So therefore, it is requested, and it's important to record all the temperatures. For DSA's project, the National Monitoring Program, we are stating that no preservatives should be added to the samples. And it is strongly recommended to complete the processing form immediately after taking the sample. And I know sometimes it's not easy to do this, but the moment we leave a time lapse between taking the sample and completing the processing form, we create the risk of incorrect information on the processing form. So please, as soon as possible after sampling. For sampling to be effective, the sample should give a true and accurate reflection of the product. That's the only time when we know that sampling is effective. Now, I'm going to go through a few requirements for effective sampling. First of all, hygiene and health is a requirement for effective sampling. Before any sample is taken, the person taking the sample should take care of personal hygiene and health to ensure that the sample is not cross-contaminated. That means cleaning and sanitizing of hands, to be in good health, not to have a contagious disease, or and then not touching the inner part of the lid and the sample bottle. And sometimes it feels so basic to say not to touch the inner part of a lid and a bottle, but in the business, it can so easy happen to touch the inner part. And then if we have then a microbial analysis, we do not want the microbial analysis of the hand, but from the milk. So we do not want to see a touching of lid and bottle. The correct containers are a requirement for effective sampling. If the sample is taken from the store shelf, the product is bought and it is kept in the original packaging material and not decanted in smaller sample bottles. Decanting is, first of all, it's unethical and the product may become contaminated. rather submit the larger bottle for analysis if that is how the milk is being sold. When sampling from a bulk tank, the milk the sample bottle must be single serve, plastic, it must be securely closed, clean, dry, and sterile. Now, the DSA provides the 100 milliliter sterile sample bottles for the National Monitoring Program. No other containers should be used. Other sampling bottles are not guaranteed to be sterile, so please let us know if your bottles have been depleted and we can restock. And as I've said, we are doing the microbial analysis on that sample, so it's absolutely crucial that the DSA's containers should be used, the sample bottles. The correct filling and closing of sample bottles are a requirement for effective sampling. Only fill the sample bottle up to the 100 milliliter filling line below the lid. If the sample bottle is too full, it makes analysis difficult and the sample may be compromised. Here is an example on the slide now of a bulk sample bottle which has been filled correctly, as opposed to one that has been overfilled. You can see the bottle has been filled beyond the filling line. So ensure that the lid of the sample bottle is also closed tightly to safeguard the integrity of the sample. As compromised product will be discarded, as such results will be invalid. So absolute care should be taken to make sure that the bottle is securely closed. Good. Proper marking of the samples is also a requirement for effective sampling. Proper marking of the sample and completing a processing form with a corresponding sample code is crucial. This way, the samples and the test results will not get mixed up. A permanent marker should be used that will not rub off. And if a label is used on packed product samples, please make sure that it doesn't cover the product information on the packaging material. The information obtained from the label is critical to assign the sample to a specific class, which entails certain analysis, and also to verify use-by dates and batch codes on the sample. On the left photo, you can see there's an example of an inadequately marked sample. Ice water and the subsequent handling of the bottle had almost completely wiped off any information needed to trace the sample back to its origin. And then you'll see the right-hand photo. Here we can see how a bulk bottle should be marked. The municipality code, first of all, where that DSA is the municipality code. And then the cycle, the 76 is the cycle, and then the sample code, the 03 is the sample code, are written neatly. And a bonus is that if it has been written on 2 locations on the bottle and an extra clue has been given, which is the milk shop's name. You can see there's the DSA milk. That's now the milk shop's name. It may seem like a tireless effort, but I assure you the correct marking of a sample is invaluable. If this step is compromised, all is compromised. Then the correct completion of the processing form will contribute to effective sampling. This form facilitates the ability to trace a non-conforming product's origin. Therefore, the sample's processing form is absolutely imperative. Please make sure that you are provided with the latest processing forms of from the DSA. It is actually communicated during the sample run. I just want to show you here, it's just a typical example of a processing form completed correctly. In conclusion, I'm just going to touch on a few pointers in completing this processing form. First of all, the sample code is extremely important for traceability, as I've said. This code must be it must be a number and not letters, please, and should correspond with the code on the sample. The province and the town is where the sample was taken, and please, it's not an indication where the inspector is situated. The expiry date or the best before date can be found on the packaging material of a packed product. In the case of a bulk tank sample, you can leave this space open. The special code is the batch number that you'll find on the packaging material of a packed sample. Again, leave this space open if the sample was taken from a bulk tank. Record the temperature as displayed on the fridge or the bulk tank, and measure and record the temperature of the product or the sample with an infrared thermometer. The temperature readings can give us information of possible breaking of the cold chain. So there's a place where the fridge and the product temperatures are jotted down. And then the name of the EHP or the inspector is needed to follow up if more information is required. Good. The brand can be found on the label of the packed product sample. In the case of a bulk sample, the brand can be left open. The store, there's a place where you can fill in the store's information. Now, the store is the retail outlet where the sample was taken. When bulk sample, with a bulk sample, indicate if the tank belongs to the shop or to the farmer. And if the tank belongs to the farmer, his information can be filled in the place where the brand is indicated. Good. So then the sample type must please be indicated. For example, pasteurized milk, raw milk, cream, amasi, or butter. This can be written out on the processing form if there is not a space provided. The sample type is especially important when it comes to bulk milk because it does not contain a label to indicate raw or not. And if you are uncertain, please indicate so. Different tests are provided for raw and pasteurized milk. The phosphatase test on pasteurized milk and the brucellosis test on raw milk. So incorrect indication of raw or pasteurized milk will lead to the wrong test being performed, and that is a total waste of money and meaningless results. So please make sure that you have the correct information, whether it's raw or pasteurized milk, and that you indicate it as such. At class designation, you can indicate full fat if it's bulk. Always you can just indicate full fat because there's not a label stating whether it's full fat or low fat, and most of the times it's full fat, so you can just write full fat. And then in the case of a packed product, please look at the label and it will indicate the class designation, and then you can just write it there. Good. We have mentioned the requirement for effective sampling to keep the product cold, and this is so important to prevent the growth of microorganisms. A higher microbial count due to temperature abuse after sampling will certainly not give us a true reflection of the original product. So it is crucial to keep the product cold at all times. Right, by taking hands, we can achieve our goal, and that is to ensure effective sampling. And that is the foundation for the monitoring of milk and dairy product quality. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for that presentation. As an old EHP myself, It is so important to understand what amazing role the environmental health practitioners play in terms of ensuring, safe products for the consumers. I've got a few questions, and I think we can put our cameras on so that you and I can see one another, and then we can run through the questions. Please, delegates, if you've got any questions, make sure to put them in now so that I can make sure to ask Jacqueline the questions as they come through. Okay, Jacqueline, I just want to clarify something. You, on one of your slides, you had a slide where you said that the temperature of the product must be below 5 degrees. But if I remember correctly, in the regulation, in 328, it states that it should be reduced below 7. So why did your slide say it must be below 5?
That is absolutely true. Thank you for the question, Adele. It is stated in Regulation 328 that the temperature is 7 degrees Celsius. And that is now for foodstuffs, sampling of foodstuff. And then in the regulation, it is mentioned, there's a reference to ISO 707. And if you have a look in the ISO document, there's a table which clearly specifies that the temperature of milk should be 5 degrees or lower. So that's why we are indicating the 5 degrees or lower.
Okay, and I think as you said, so it's important that you should have the ISO standard as well as reference in terms of making sure
Yes.
that you are doing everything correctly. I just also want to ask, when you were explaining prior taking the sample in terms of that, you must mix wherever, if it's a bulk container, and there was specific time allocations for the volumes. Is that also specified somewhere?
Yes, in the regulation 328.
Okay.
Depending on the size of the container, yes, it's been
Okay.
specified there.
Wonderful. And then also, why should the sample not be frozen?
If you are freezing the sample, it will have an influence on the microbial load. It will have a lower microbial load, and then you are not going to get a true indication of the original product. So it's going to have an effect on the microbial numbers.
Okay, so the temperature is important, below 5, but not frozen. And then,
Yes.
if a bulk milk supplier delivers to more than one milk shop, can a sample only be taken at one of the shops?
We recommend that a sample be taken at all of the shops where they supply, because yes, you can get a good indication of the farmer's milk. It's the same milk, but now the handling at the different shops will differ. And at the end of the day, we want to see how the milk gets to the consumer. So we need to have that indication of what happens at each and every milk shop. Maybe there can be temperature abuse or incorrect handling, and that will reflect in the lab results if there is some kind of misuse or yeah. So it is recommended to take a sample at each and every milk shop.
Okay. Then there's a question, why do you refer to tests for raw milk when sale of raw milk is prohibited?
Sale of raw milk is not prohibited in all the districts or provinces, districts, municipality districts. So it depends on, there are certain areas that can sell raw milk, and therefore we are also testing as part of the national monitoring program the raw milk. Yes.
And if a shop owner doesn't know if he's selling raw or pasteurized milk, what should the environmental health practitioner then do?
I would advise the environmental health practitioner to make then contact with the supplier. If it's the farmer, just to make the contact and ask whether they are pasteurizing or not, because it's important information that the retailer should have. And I can just say that we also recommend that if it's raw milk or pasteurized milk, that must be indicated on the bulk tank. So if the shop owner is not aware if it's raw milk or pasteurized milk, I think it will be a good exercise to find out from the farmer and let them bring it on the bulk tank.
Okay. Then I think a very important question and a very real question. You also specified that the environmental health practitioner must buy the sample. So the question is just to see clarity on what the speaker said. As a municipality, the samples that is collected for the DSA must be purchased. What should be done if the municipality did not have enough funds or no funds for the procurement of the samples?
Well, that is unfortunately a problem. Um, yes, at this stage, I cannot give a solution to the problem, but unfortunately, yeah, that if it's yeah, if you get it from the shelf, you need to pay for it. My advice would be then maybe to have a discussion between the municipalities and make sure that there is not duplicate samples, to maybe discuss and try to get a schedule and say, well, you only sample this and we'll sample the other types of packed products, just to eliminate the duplication and only buy one type of brand. Yeah, but luckily for the bulk milk, and that's sometimes where there's more problems with the bulk milk, that is free, that is taken in a sample container. But yes, maybe to work with other municipalities, but I do not have a solution for the lack of funds, unfortunately not.
Yes, yeah, I think it comes through to communication. If you are within a municipality where you know there's those challenges, most probably
Mm,
they can communicate with you to determine what other municipalities, are also
yes,
on the same, and then see to it, like you've now suggested, to come to a solution to ensure that the most important products are tested.
yes.
Okay, my question, I've got another question here. My question is, what is funds the testing of what? My question is, who funds? A person is asking who funds the testing of the products. So I
There
assume
is,
that's the DSA that's funding that.
yes, Dairy Standard Agency is funding the testing, the lab testing.
Okay, so another question. So we should not take the sample if it is offered by the shop for free. So I assume it's the
Um,
same person asking the question if they,
yeah,
if the municipality doesn't have the money and the shop owner provides the product for testing and indicates to the environmental health practitioner that he shouldn't pay for it, can they then still take it?
they can still take it. Yeah, I think it's not a problem if the shop owner gives the sample for analysis and it's free. That's not a problem. But we cannot just assume to take samples from the shelf and not to pay for it. But if the shop owner comes and say, well, you can just take the sample, then it's not a problem.
The
But that
document,
must be, yeah.
yeah, the document that you showed that they complete, maybe the environmental health practitioner can just indicate there that the shop owner offered the sample for free.
Yes,
I
yes,
assume the shop owner also signs that document.
yes. We want them to sign because they should be present. That is really important that they are aware of a sample being taken. Especially when it's in a smaller shop, a milk shop, where there's a bulk tank that the owner should know, but also from the bigger retail. It's always good to let the people know that you've taken a sample, because at the end of the day, we need to convey the results also to that retail outlet, and they should know a sample has been taken and I can expect results to come in.
Yes, yeah. And I also think the person in charge is the environmental health practitioner can look at the certificate of acceptability that in any event is supposed to be displayed to make
Yes,
sure that,
yes,
they are
yes.
dealing with the right person. So that can
Yeah,
also help. Okay,
yeah.
I've got another question here. Is the testing of raw milk a readily available test, as I have been advised by a representative of DSA that this is not so, thus reason why some municipalities prohibit the sale of raw milk. Is there a solution that will allow all municipalities the sale of raw milk?
Well, it's now two questions. Some of the tests we outsource for the raw milk, but I don't see the link between the laboratory testing and the permission to sell raw milk. I'm not sure what that link is. I don't understand the question, but yeah, it's not in us to decide. It's stated in the regulation 1555 who is allowed to sell raw milk. So it is not for DSA to make that call.
Jacqueline, I think what I'm going to do, Ian, if okay with you, I'm going to unmute you, and then you can maybe just make sure that you get clarity for your question. So, Ian, I've unmuted you. You can freely ask the question to Jacqueline.
Yeah, hi, Jacqueline. The reason I'm asking such a confused question is we have a massive consumer base that wants raw milk in the eThekwini municipality area, and from Scottburgh through to Belito through to Howick, we have a massive customer base. And we've been told that because the tests are not easily done and the municipalities can't do tests on raw milk, we are not allowed to sell raw milk in those areas. So we've been stopped. All the dairies in this area have been stopped from selling raw milk by the Department of Health. And I'm trying to find out, the DSA legislation says if it's free from antibiotics and it complies with certain things, it's okay. But I'm trying to work out what I can do to communicate to municipalities to say, if you do this test or that test, we can do the same. If our milk's okay, can we sell it? And I don't yet have an answer to that. So I'm really hoping DSA can suggest a plan of action or can suggest what I try and do, because at the moment we've had to stop selling raw milk.
Well, the selling of the raw milk has not to do with the testing. There's not a link to it. The link is rather that in a certain regulation 1555, it's stated not to sell raw milk. Municipalities are not allowed to sell raw milk, except for certain municipalities, and there's an annexure that states the municipalities that are allowed to sell raw. So at this stage, I'm not sure how to where to apply, and maybe I can just come back to you if I can find that out. How to get in that annexure to sell raw milk. I'm not sure how to do that, but we can just communicate with email. If you can just send me an email, I will get you that answer. But it has nothing to do with the testing. That's not the reason why you are not allowed to sell raw milk. It's according to the regulation 1555. So that's the answer to that. And then if you are not in that annexure stating that you are allowed, I'm at this stage not sure how to get that toestemming.
The permission.
Yes.
No. I understand.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Any help I can get, I would love, because I've got a huge Muslim community that are fighting me every day.
Okay, let's chat. Send me an email and I can make sure that you get the right information.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ian. I'm gonna mute you again, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Like Jacqueline said, she will be in contact with you, or you can send her email. Then I've got another question here. Does the DSA also test somatic cell counts in bulk milk tank, in a bulk milk tank?
Yes, I believe so, yes. They can just make contact with our laboratory. Again, send me an email and I will get you to the right person.
Fantastic. I hope that answers your question, Salmarie. If not, just shout and we can clarify further. Then there's another question. So you will need proof that the sample was taken in presence of the shop representative. You need that to share with you when the samples are collected from our officers by our officials. Yes, I think that's quite clear. We said that the
Yes.
sample must be taken in the presence of the representative of the
Mhm.
shop. If that person is not present, it must be an adult.
Yeah.
And like I said, I can remember in the days that I did those, the more information you write down on the
Yes.
form of actually of the activities that happened when you were
Yeah.
taking the sample, the better, because then you've
Yes.
got that history to go back onto.
Absolutely.
Okay, Jacqueline, it seems like Salmarie says thank you very much. You've
Pleasure.
answered her question. It seems like we've answered all the questions. It doesn't seem like there's any other questions that's coming in. So, Jacqueline, from my side, I would just like to say thank you very, very much for your time. Thank you very much for addressing this very important topic again. Really, really appreciate that. And like Jacqueline has said, you are all more than welcome to email her if there's any other questions that you feel or that you think about afterwards. So this was the fifth session for the year. And as I've said in the beginning, this session is recorded and the slides and the recording will be available on our Food Focus website. So if you go to foodfocus.co.za, you will see at the top there's a bar that says resources. If you hover with your mouse over the resource button, it brings up webinars. And there you will see all the webinars that the DSA, SASDT, and any other webinars that we've hosted is there, the recording as well, if the presenter has given us the presentations with the presentation. In this case, Jacqueline is making her presentation available, so you will be able to get the presentation there. I just also want to mention this point. The GoToWebinar platform automatically generates a attendance certificate, and you will tomorrow receive an email, the same type of email that you received when you signed on and registered to attend this webinar. And then at the bottom it will say certificate, and you will be able to download your certificate. Please note, it's a once off. The system generates it once off, so it's your responsibility to make sure that you download your certificate and save it. And please note, the certificate is an attendance certificate. And it's only generated if the system can see that you signed on and that you stayed for the duration of the presentation and then signed off. Also note, the DSA did not apply for CPD points at the Professional Health Professions Council. There's no CPD points allocated or recognized with the Health Professions Council of South Africa. Please make sure that you register for our newsletter. You can go onto our website and make sure to receive our newsletters. And also please follow us on all our social platforms, because those are the platforms that we utilize to inform you about webinars or any interesting issues within industry. The DSA is hosting a webinar on the 30th of August again. We will still confirm the topic, but we will make you aware on all these different platforms. Also, if we close the webinar, there's a short survey, and we would really appreciate your feedback, because this helps us and Jacqueline to see to it what the topics are that you would like more information on. So once again, Jacqueline, thank you so much for your time, and to everybody that signed in. It's so awesome to see that we had 165 people that registered to attend this webinar this morning, and they were all signed in. So we had 100% attendance, Jacqueline.
Great news.
So everybody, Jacqueline, thank you. Have a great
Thank you.
day until the next time. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye bye.